Hey guys, tonight we begin the third episode about someone you definitely know. Even if you only vaguely remember his lion-skin wardrobe or that Disney movie where he punches a hydra. Welcome to episode 3 of The Legend of Herculesa, Bedtime, History Journey into Madness, Murder, and a really bad day that never quite ends. You're walking under the slow, gold light of a Theban sunset. The air's thick with wood smoke and olive oil. A goat bleats somewhere it's not yours, but it might be later. Round you, Thebes is unusually quiet. There's a hush, as if the city's holding its breath, because tonight, Hera is not sleeping. You probably won't survive this, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and the local time in the comments. I want to know where in the world you're falling asleep. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. Let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't meet Hercules the way you expect. Not mid-roar, not mid-punch, but quietly, alone, in the dark. He's sitting at the edge of his bed, elbows on his knees. His lion-skin cape is slung over a stool. His club rests against the wall. His wife, Megara, breathes peacefully behind him, curled around their youngest. The children are safe. It's one of those rare, brief evenings that don't ask anything of him, and still, something's gnawing, because peace is never for naught when you're born from lightning and adultery. You're in Thebes, years after the war with the minions. Heracles, son of Zeus and the mortal queen Alcmene, has earned this peace. He led the charge. He liberated the city. He married Megara, King Creon's daughter. He's even been something like normal lately, training youths in the gymnasium, hauling olive crates for fun, telling stories at the hearth. But Hera watches. Always Hera. You remember her, right? Zeus's wife, goddess of marriage, queen of Olympus, and fully done with Zeus's parade of mortal mistresses and illegitimate children. Heracles' glory of Hera was named in mockery, tribute, and Hera never forgets a name. It's said that even as a baby, he was on her hit list. One version goes that she sent 2 serpents to kill him in his cradle. He strangled them both with his baby fists while giggling. Another claims she delayed his birth so his cousin Eurystheus would be king instead. Petty? Maybe. Strategic? Absolutely. But tonight, Hera doesn't send snakes. She sends something quieter, something older, something you can't punch. Madness. You don't see her arrive. You don't hear the snap of her fingers or the shimmer of Iris's rainbow descent. You only notice when the air shifts just a little, like static. Like ozone, historians still argue whether Hera acted alone. Some point to Lisa, the spirit of madness, as an independent agent of chaos. Others say she's Hera's creature, a pawn used to unravel Heracles from the inside. Euripides, the ancient dramatist, gives her a scene of her own reluctant, divine, and disturbingly poetic. Lyssa doesn't want to infect Heracles. She does it anyway. Because even goddesses have bosses. You don't see Heracles' eyes widen. You just feel it when he stands. He steps into the nursery. Not like a father, like a soldier, like a stranger in his own skin. One child stirs. Megara murmurs something in her sleep. You try to reach out, but this isn't your story to stop in the version Apollodorus tells. It happened so fast, no one can scream. He thinks they're enemies. He thinks he's defending something. Hyas sees. Eurystheus spies. He sees monsters. He doesn't see his sons. And Megara, she's the last, always the last, is covered in blood when Athena intervenes. Boom. Just like that. One swing of her spear butt, not to kill him, it's to knock him out. Spare him the realization. You hold your breath as Heracles collapses, surrounded by what's left of his life. His club rolls from his hand. The lion-skin cloak flutters down like a funeral shroud outside. The goats are still bleeding. Theban guards whisper about nightmares and omens. One of them swears he saw smoke rising from the palace roof, but there was no fire in reality. A god just broke. That's the part no one really talks about. Everyone remembers the strength, the labors, the monsters, but not the way he sits in silence for 3 days after, not the way he doesn't eat, not the way he tries to kill himself. Your heart beats slower now. The panic is fading, and something colder is setting in. The aftermath. One scroll from the 5th century BCE describes how Heracles was chained for his own safety. Not by force, but out of mercy. He wouldn't stop clawing at his own chest. The thought he could rip the madness out with his hands. He couldn't. One fringe theory whispered among modern scholars is that this entire myth mirrors a real-life trauma response. Some think it reflects post-battle psychosis. Others whisper about ancient epilepsy, sacred madness, or a forgotten initiation, right gone wrong. You sit with him through the silence. You feel every tick of guilt sink deeper into his bones. You feel the moment it shifts not away from grief, but into purpose, because someone's coming. A friend, a king. It's a reason not to die, but we'll meet him in the next section. For now, the night hangs heavy. Thebes has no songs tonight, tales of valor. Just one man, broken on the floor, waiting to be told what to do next. You sit beside him, silent in the growing weight of dawn. The marble is cold beneath you. The blood is dry now, caked on the walls, flecked across his tunic, still dark beneath his nails. His hands don't shake. They just rest, slack, in his lap. That's worse. Somehow, you blink. You wonder how long it's been since Heracles did the same. The sun creeps in like it's not sure it's allowed. A lazy shaft of light falls across the courtyard. Birds dare a few notes before thinking better of it. Somewhere, a pot breaks. Distantly, a woman weeps. But inside this room, it's still just you and him. And then you hear footsteps, soft leather soles on polished stone. No weapons drawn, just patience, confidence. Theseus. Now, before you scoff at the name like you're speed-running Greek myths, yes, the Minotaur guy. Yes, he's real. And yes, he's here. Because this isn't a rivalry story. This isn't who's the better hero. Playground nonsense. This is Theseus showing up when no one else would. You see, word travels fast in Thebes, Edema, and by the time Theseus hears it, everyone else is already too afraid to go near the palace. They whisper things like tainted monster, cursed by the gods. But Theseus walks straight in like he's bringing tea to a grumpy uncle. He stands in the doorway, arms crossed, chin tilted. And when he speaks, it's calm, low, honest. You done murdering everyone? Or should I come back later? Yeah, that's the tone. And you'd expect Heracles to rage at that, to growl, to weep, to deny everything. But he doesn't. He just lifts his head for the first time and says, I remember everything. You watch Theseus' jaw tighten just a bit. They don't embrace. There's no dramatic forehead touch or brow tears. These aren't those kinds of men. But there's something quiet in how Theseus kneels, how he pulls off his cloak and wraps it around Heracles' shoulders. He says nothing more for a while, just sits with him, breathes with him, lets him exist in the ruin of what he's done. Because, here's the thing, in ancient Greece, there was no therapy, no hotline, no TikTok slideshows about trauma recovery. There was ritual, there was exile, and if you were lucky, there was a friend who didn't flinch. Historians still argue whether this scene between Heracles and Theseus is a historical invention or mythic metaphor. Some say Theseus represents reason stepping in after chaos. Others say the Athenians just wanted to give their golden boy a heroic cameo. But fringe interpretations, especially in modern psych meet circles, paint this moment as the beginning of communal healing. The recognition that grief can't be exorcised alone. You're still watching as Theseus stands, dusts off his knees. You can't stay here, he says, not unkindly. They'll come for you, or you'll come for yourself. Heracles nods. What then? He asks. I can't undo it. I don't deserve breath. Theseus scratches his jaw, then jerks his head toward the open door. Come home with me, to Athens. We'll talk to the oracle. We'll figure it out. You follow them through the hall, past overturned vases and scattered scrolls, past the child's sandal, past memories now frozen in time. Heracles doesn't cry. That part's over. But his steps are slow, like he's still not convinced the earth wants to hold his weight. Outside, okay, the world looks different. Thebes is too bright, too sharp, okay? And yet you notice people watching from windows, not with hatred, okay? With fear, yes, but also curiosity, pain, recognition. They lost someone, too. One elderly priest lowers his head in quiet respect as they pass. Another spits, muttering that the gods should have struck Heracles dead. Theseus. He throws the second guy a look that could bend bronze. Later, in the small guest chamber at the edge of the Athenian border, you watch Heracles wash his hands over and over, scrubbing the same spot until his skin is raw. You know that won't do anything, so does he. But it's something. Theseus returns with food. It's dried figs, barley, a chunk of honeycomb. Heracles doesn't eat. Theseus breaks off a piece of bread anyway, tosses it to a passing dog, sits down beside him. I once left a woman on an island, he says. She loved me, didn't look back. Heracles stares at the wall. Theseus continues, I've killed two. Not like this, but enough. A long silence. Then Heracles whispers, I can't walk free knowing what I did. And this, dear listener, is when Theseus says something surprisingly profound for a guy who once wrestled a pine-bending bandit and wore a bull costume. You'd think the gods don't kill their own. They end storms with floods. They end pride with fire. You're no different. The only thing that separates us is that you remember. That lands. You sit with that dot, because Heracles isn't just grieving. He's ashamed, and shame is the trickiest wound. It doesn't bleed. It doesn't scream. It just hums quietly in your bones, asking you to disappear. But Theseus won't let him. Outside, a storm rolls in. Not a dramatic, God-sent storm, just rain. Soft and heavy, cleansing. You hear Heracles speak one final time that night. Just before sleep finally wins, then I'll find a way to earn my name. Theseus doesn't respond. Just throws another log on the fire. It crackles softly through the night, and in the shadows of that flickering flame, something shifts. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the first breath toward redemption. You wake to the scent of wet earth and lavender. Things always smells like it just had a nervous breakdown and then took a deep bath. The rain stopped sometime before dawn, and now the air is thick with that weird in-between feeling, like even the weather knows you've got soul repair work ahead. Heracles is already outside, shirtless, of course, not because it's hot, but because guilt apparently gives you abs, okay? He's kneeling in the dirt, hands pressed into the grass like he's asking the ground to swallow him. You almost expect him to apologize to the ants. Theseus emerges, still chewing something that's definitely not breakfast food. Maybe an almond, maybe a laurel leaf. He doesn't greet you, just jerks his head again. Time to move. You're headed to Delphi now. If you've never heard of Delphi, think of it as the ancient world's apple genius, bar butts staffed entirely by high priestesses speaking in riddles while sitting over a crack in the earth. They didn't fix your broken phone, but they might tell you your uncle's ghost wants revenge, or that you should avoid figs for 7 days. Delphi sits high in the mountains, curled around the slopes of Mount Parnassus. You ride in silence. The air thins. The olive groves give way to fir trees. The path narrows. You pass other pilgrims, some carrying goats, others carrying questions. Heracles carries only himself, and honestly, there's already too much. The temple looms like something carved out of the sky. Marble, gold, smoke, and that feeling of being watched, not by people, but by time. Like the very stones, remember what you've done. Inside, the oracle waits. She doesn't flinch when Heracles steps forward, doesn't recoil, just tilts her head and listens. Her breath is slow. Her body rocks slightly, some say, from the vapors rising beneath the temple, or others, from the weight of the gods sitting behind her eyes. Then she speaks. You brace for some soft, cryptic suggestion like seek balance or the answers are within. Nope, she says. Go to Tyrants, serve Eurystheus. Do whatever he demands. Do it without protest, okay? Do it until your soul is quiet. That's it. Historians still argue whether this was a legitimate cleansing rite or a political stunt. Some believe Eurystheus, Heracles' royal cousin, wanted to humiliate him under the guise of ritual penance. Others think the 12 labors were symbolic, meant to reflect internal purification through external struggle. But you're watching a man clench his jaw, nod once, and say, "Then I will go." Fringe scholars whisper that the oracle's real words were darker, that the Pythia told Heracles he could never undo what he'd done, only distract the gods long enough for them to forget. Either way, you leave Delphi with no illusions. This is not a redemption arc. This is community service for crimes committed in divine madness. Back in Athens, Theseus helps him gather supplies. Not swords, not armor, just things that won't draw attention. Heracles is to arrive at Tiryns unarmed, unguarded, and utterly obedient. Before he leaves, Theseus offers him one last piece of advice. You don't fight the gods, he says. You outlast them. And honestly, that might be the most Athenian thing ever said. The road to Tiryns is less poetic. It's dry, it's dusty, annoying. You pass farmers who don't look up, children who whisper behind their hands. One old man spits in Heracles' direction, then limps away before he can respond. He doesn't respond. You can feel it, can't you? Be quiet, the slow erasure of pride. He used to walk like he owned the road. Now he walks like he hopes. Road doesn't notice. Tiryns appears on the horizon, a fortress of massive stone walls and people with very long memories. You know that myth about the walls being built by Cyclopes? Not a joke. You can still see the size of the boulders, stacked like someone played Jenga with mountains. Inside waits King Eurystheus. You remember him, right? The guy Hera made king instead of Heracles, nephew to Zeus, but more rat-faced tax auditor than warrior prince. He's ready. He's been waiting, and he does not hide his smugness. When Heracles kneels before him, Eurystheus circles like a cat who just saw the family dog get shaved. You'll perform 10 labors, he declares. Tasks so absurd, so impossible, that no sane man would survive them. You'll do them without payment, without thanks. And you'll do them because the gods say you must. Heracles just nods, because what else can you do when your punishment is wrapped in obedience? Eurystheus leans close, almost whispering, "Let's see how much glory Hera leaves you with, cousin." And so it begins. The first task, the Nemean lion. It sounds simple. One lion. Big deal, right? Except this one's fur is impenetrable. Bronze won't pierce it. Arrows bounce off, swords snap. dark and it lives in a cave like some sweaty introvert, with murder in its heart. You can feel Heracles sizing it up, not with ego, but with something closer to curiosity. He tries to bow, use. He tries to sword, useless, so he does what any mentally stable person wouldn't. He wrestles it with his bare hands. No shield, no armor, it's trauma, biceps, and the quiet rage of a man trying to choke his own past into submission. He wins, of course, snaps its neck, skins it with its own claw. Wears the pelt, not for glory, but as armor, because the world doesn't throw swords anymore. It throws memory, and he's going to need something tougher than bronze to survive the next 11 rounds. You're back in Tyrants. The lion skin still drips at the edges. Smells like regret and wet goat, but it keeps out arrows and whispers, so Heracles keeps it on. You'd think surviving an indestructible lion would get him a moment of peace, maybe a fruit basket. Nope. Eurystheus won't even look him in the eye. Just signals from behind a curtain, like the world's most anxious drama teacher. Heracles steps into the throne room, and Eurystheus nearly dives into a clay jar. True story. In one version, the king literally hides in a jar when Heracles shows up. Historians still argue whether this detail is satire or an actual ritual of humiliation. Either way, it's comedy gold. You stifle a chuckle as the herald unrolls the next decree. Task 2, the Lernaean Hydra. You blinked, then sigh. Of course, it's the Hydra. 9 heads, its poisonous breath, regrows to 4 every one you cut off. Slives in a swamp that smells like someone boiled cabbage and dead hopes. It's just your average pest control job, apparently so off. You go. The road to Lerna is thick with reeds, buzzing insects, and the kind of humidity that makes your socks give up on life. You reach the marsh, and sure enough, the water hisses. Frogs stop croaking, okay? Even the trees lean slightly away. You feel the ground vibrate, and then there it stands, 9 heads, hissing, twisting, each mouth frothing poison, so acidic it melts rock. Heracles doesn't hesitate, draws his sword, slashes. 1 head drops, 2 grow back. Excellent. You roll your eyes. Keys growls, more annoyed than afraid. Keys, this is less epic monster battle and more God-induced group project with no end. But hey, he's got help. His nephew Elas is nearby, is holding a flaming torch and looking way too excited for someone about to perform mythic surgery. Here's how they do it. Heracles chops, lies, cauterizes, slice, burn, slice, burn. It's like mythological laser. Hair removal. It works. Eventually, the last head mortal, of course, is crushed under a boulder. You don't know what's in that swamp water, but you're pretty sure it violates at least 3 environmental laws. Fringe theory, time, some. Scholars believe the Hydra symbolizes water pollution or the conquering of wetlands by early settlers. Others say it's a metaphor for trauma cut. 1 memory down, and 2 more take its place unless you seal the wound. Either way, the real monster here might be the rot that never sleeps. After the Hydra, Heracles bottles the venom. Not because he's planning to start a skincare line, but because the stuff is lethal. Later, it'll coat his arrows. Later, it'll unravel more lives than he means it to. But for now, it's just poison in a flask, tucked into his pack like a souvenir from a murder swamp. Back in Tyrants, Eurystheus is furious. Why? Because Iolaus helped. That violates the fine print. You can almost hear the bureaucratic hiss of quill on scroll as Eurystheus declares that labor doesn't count. Petty. Absolutely petty. Heracles just stares at him, says nothing, but you can feel it, right? The slow burn under the silence. Not rage, not yet, just tiredness. A deep, bone-tired ache that comes from trying to climb out of a pit. Someone keeps digging deeper. Task 3, the Serenian hind. A deer, you scoff, until you hear the rest. This isn't just any deer. It's sacred to Artemis. Gold horns, bronze hooves, faster than anything on earth. Catching it without hurting it. Basically, impossible. Hurting it. Blasphemy. Straight to Hades' offense. You head north. Forests stretch around you like a green cathedral. Moss cushions your feet. Leaves filter the light. You don't speak for days. Heracles doesn't either. He tracks the hind in silence, following hoofprints so faint they might be ghosts. He spends a year on this one. Yes, a year. 1 year chasing a single deer through valleys and mountaintops. He doesn't trap it. He doesn't outpace it. He just follows, quiet, patient, until finally it rests near a stream, and he sneaks up just enough to net it. The deer kicks, panics, but he calms it, whispers something you can't hear. When Artemis arrives, angry, radiant, armed, Heracles kneels, offers the deer unharmed, swears it's for the god's will, not personal gain. She studies him, then nods, lets him go. That's the first time a god shows grace. Not Hera, obviously, but still progress. Back in Tyrants, Eurystheus again tries to dismiss it. It wasn't delivered fast enough, he whines. Too many loopholes. You want to scream. Heracles just moves on, because what else is there? Labor 4, the Erymanthian boar. It's less elegant, more muddy. You trudge up a snowy mountain. It's past terrified farmers and a drunk centaur named Pholus, who offers Heracles wine and regrets it. Almost immediately, want to hear something wild? One scroll claims that when Heracles uncorked that sacred wine, it summoned a centaur stampede. Arrows flew. Friends died. Heracles barely escaped. Pholus accidentally stabs himself with a poisoned arrow and dies holding the bottle. Tragic, darkly comic. Heracles continues. He finds the boar, huge, foaming, angry, wrestles it into submission, drags it back to Tyrants over his shoulder, and when Eurystheus sees it, he screams like a kid seeing a spider in his cereal, runs, jumps back into his jar. You can't make this up. Actually, you can, but ancient playwrights already did it for you. That night, you sit by the fire with Heracles. His hands are scraped, his arms sore. He doesn't smile, but his eyes flicker a little when the boar snores beside him like a hairy boulder. You ask him if he feels better. He shrugs. Redemption doesn't come from killing beasts, but maybe, just maybe, it comes from surviving the parts of yourself you didn't mean to unleash. You don't dream that night, or maybe you do, but it's all hoofbeats and poison breath, and the echo of Heracles dragging that boar through snowdrifts with nothing but rope and a long sigh. When you wake, he's already halfway down the mountain. You hurry to catch up, your feet slipping on wet stone. Okay, the wind biting at your ears. He doesn't speak. You don't need him to. You've seen the rhythm now, okay? The pattern of his penance. Accept the labor, conquer the beast, endure Eurystheus' complaints, rinse, repeat. It's less about heroism now, okay? More like a divine performance review with no raise in sight. Back in Tyrants, okay? The herald meets him with a scroll and a pinched expression. Labor 5, he declares. Clean the Augean stables. You laugh. Heracles does not now. You're probably imagining a wooden barn with a couple goats and maybe a sleepy donkey. No, the Augean stables are home to over 1,000 immortal cattle. They haven't been cleaned in decades. The smell alone could wake the dead and politely send them back. This is not a task for a warrior. It's punishment, and that's the point. Eurystheus doesn't want Heracles to fail. He wants him humiliated. Heracles stares at the scroll, then at the horizon, says nothing, sets off. You reach the stables by dusk. The air is thick with flies and divine neglect. Farmers whisper warnings. One girl offers him a sprig of rosemary for luck. He tucks it into his belt, doesn't smile, but he doesn't throw it away either. Now, here's where it gets clever. Instead of scooping muck for the next 40 years, Heracles reroutes to nearby rivers. That's right, he digs a channel, breaks some walls. Okay, lets nature do the heavy lifting. In one afternoon, the stables are gleaming. It's innovative, brilliant, and absolutely not what Eurystheus wanted. When he finds out Heracles took payment from King Augeas, just a single promise of reward, he disqualifies the labor. Again, it doesn't count. Too easy, he grumbles. Too political. Historians still debate the real meaning of this one. Some argue it represents the cleansing of corruption Augeas, being a metaphor for a decaying political system. Others say it was a jab at labor and power dynamics, with Heracles showing that brute strength alone isn't always the answer. And a few fringe theories propose this was a parody and ancient punchline dressed as a challenge. But whatever it was meant to be, it's over now. On to labor 6. The Stymphalian birds. Less poetic, much sharper. They live near a marsh, so quiet. It rings in your ears. These aren't cute little songbirds. These are bronze-beaked murder missiles. Their feathers are razor sharp. They dive like arrows. Their screeches, honestly, worse than TikTok ads at full volume. Heracles can't get close. The reeds are too thick, so he pulls out a trick. Athena lends him casta-nats. Yes, like the clacky things used in flamenco, except these were forged by Hephaestus and probably cursed. He shakes them. The birds panic. They rise. Shrieking in, he picks them off, one by one, with his poison-tipped arrows. The sky darkens with feathers and curses, but eventually, silence. Just the wind in the reeds. Another labor done. No loopholes this time. Still, Eurystheus doesn't celebrate, just scowls, taps his quill against his teeth, plots something more humiliating, more grueling, more tedious. Task 7. The Cretan bull. You groan. Heracles shrugs, because this one is personal. You see, this bull is the same creature that fathered the Minotauria. That guy. The one Theseus tangled with in the labyrinth. This bull was sacred to Poseidon, meant for sacrifice, but King Minos kept it, built palaces and lies around it. Now it roams wild, smashing fields and snorting salt. You sail to Crete. The sea is restless. Heracles doesn't care. He's silent through the crossing, staring at the horizon like it owes him something. On the island, doesn't wait, no banquet, no chat, just walks straight to where the bull grazes massive white, glinting like marble. In the sun, they wrestle, not with weapons, with hands. It's brutal. Dust flies, hooves, crash, clees, grunts, teeth clenched, muscles screaming. He finally grabs its horns, twists, forces it down. He doesn't kill it, just leads it back. Tethered, tamed. Eurystheus. Sees the bull, jumps into his jar again. You sense a theme here. Later that night, while the bull sleeps nearby, snoring loud enough to cause earthquakes, stare into the fire. He doesn't gloat, doesn't speak, but there's something different. Hey? Stillness. The kind that comes when you've faced enough beasts to realize the real ones were your face. You wonder, does he believe in redemption yet? He turns to you suddenly and says, "They think this is punishment." You tilt your head, but it's not, he murmurs. It's distraction. It keeps me from thinking. That's the real mercy. And you get it, because sometimes lifting stones and chasing monsters is easier than sitting with what you've done. By now, you've got the rhythm of this thing: labor, travel, wrangle, triumph, repeat. But even so, you're not ready for this next one, because it's not a monster, not a swamp, not a blood-soaked battlefield. It's horses. You squint at the scroll when the herald reads it. Maybe you misheard, but no, Playbird 8. Tamed the mares of Diomedes. Ah, yes, horses. Except not the kind that eat hay and let toddlers braid their manes. These ones eat people. You're not joking, okay? These are man-eating mares, stabled in the kingdom of Thrace, under the rule of Diomedes, son of Ares, war lover, king of wild nonsense. The horses have been fed a steady diet of flesh and fear. They're twitchy, vicious, and kept chained to stone posts so they don't eat each other. So naturally, Heracles doesn't flinch. You make your way northeast, past angry clouds and more. Then a few nervous farmers who've heard rumors about the last guy who tried to feed the horses. Spoiler, they fed on him. When you reach Thrace, you're greeted by the stench of rotting meat and war. Diomedes is waiting, and he's not subtle. Bronze armor, giant spear, beard full of grease. The kind of man who laughs at funerals and probably wrestles his own reflection for fun. Heracles doesn't waste time. He confronts him. There are two versions of this tale. One where they clash like titans clanking steel, teeth bared, fury in their veins. And another where Heracles simply grabs him, drags him out to the paddock, and feeds him to his own horses. You can guess which version the poets liked more. Either way, the mares quiet after that, as if the taste of their master snapped some curse. Heracles binds them, leads them away like oversized puppies with trauma issues, and, for the first time, no divine interference. No jealous Hera, no whining EURYSTHEUS. Just silence. French scholars have a field day with this one. Some claim the man-eating mares represent human appetites, the uncontrolled, ravenous hunger for war, dominance, flesh. Others say they're a metaphor for corrupted nurture. What happens when even a noble beast is fed poison long enough? Historians still argue whether Diomedes himself was real or a personification of cruelty. Back in Tyrants, Eurystheus peers from his jar and sighs. Fine, he mutters. It counts. You almost feel bad for him, almost, because Heracles is barely registering the victory. His mind is somewhere else, somewhere darker. It's time for Labor 9. Retrieve the girdle of HIPPOLYTA. And now you're treading into dangerous territory, because this isn't just another beast. It's a queen, a warrior, and here's about to get involved again. You sail across the Aegean, past gulls and waves, and the glint of something sharp waiting at the edge of the world. The land of the Amazons rises like a challenge tall cliffs, smoke curling from cook fires, and banners dancing in the wind. The Amazons are not the shy type. They meet you at the shore, weapons drawn, expressions unreadable, and then Hippolyta steps forward, tall, composed, crowned in gold and silence. Her girdle, the prized belt of Ares, gleams at her waist, a symbol of her status, her strength, and her divine favor. You expect tension, you expect battle cries, but instead, she listens. Heracles explains his mission, explains Eurystheus, explains Hera, and Hippolyta, surprisingly, agrees. Some say she pities him, some say she admires his blunt honesty, others suggest an unspoken bond, two figures bound by gods and expectations, navigating impossible roles. But before anything can be exchanged peacefully, guess who shows up? That's right, Hera, disguised, of course. Maybe as an Amazon scout, maybe as a whisper on the wind. Either way, she spreads a lie that Heracles is here to kidnap Hippolyta. Chaos. You blink, and the Amazons are drawing swords. They're shouting, confusion, it's heartbreak. Heracles tries to explain. They don't listen, and in the end, tragedy. He kills Hippolyta, takes the girdle, escapes with barely a breath left, and you watch him curled on the deck of the ship, the girdle in one hand, blood on the other. He doesn't speak for hours, just watches the sea, letting guilt salt his skin. Historians still argue whether Hippolyta died in that exchange. Some versions insist she lived, even ruled after. Others say her death was symbolic, the death of peace between gods and mortals. A few fringe interpretations suggest this was Hera's most successful manipulation, turning mercy into massacre. Back in Terence, Chrysis accepts the girdle without comment. No gloating this time, just a nod, as if even he knows something sacred was broken. That night, Heracles doesn't sleep. Neither do you, because some labors don't clean the soul, they stain it deeper. You're sitting in the palace courtyard again. Same dusty tiles, same shadow of the jar where Eurystheus is hiding, probably calculating how to make the next labor worse. You'd think by now Heracles would be numb to it all, but no. He's quieter, yes, but under that lion pelt, something's simmering. Regret? Rage? Maybe all three. The herald approaches, clears his throat like he's about to announce the end, of the world with particularly delicate manners. Labor 10. Steal the cattle of Geryon. You frown. Cattle again. But of course, this isn't normal cattle. Keys are divine, red, fire-eyed, and guarded by a three-bodied, six-armed, possibly winged creature named Geryon. Also, a giant herdsman and a two-headed dog. Because why stop at one monster when you can get the deluxe combo pack? The cattle are kept on the island of Areta, far to the west. So far, in fact, that to reach it, Heracles has to cross deserts, climb mountains, and at one point, threaten the sun. Yes, the sun.c. On the way there, the heat gets so unbearable that Heracles, sweaty and furious, draws his bow and aims it straight at Helios, literal sun god, divine embodiment of light and order. Helios, amused or impressed or slightly terrified, doesn't smite him. Instead, he offers a golden cup, a magic one, big enough for Heracles to sail across the sea like a mythological Uber. Mainstream historians agree. This golden cup symbolizes cosmic favor. Fringe theorists, they love this part. Some say the cup was actually a spaceship. Others think it's an allegory for ancient Egyptian solar boats. One guy insists it was a metaphor for ego containment. That guy's never wrestled a lion. So Heracles sails in a giant god cup to Erythea, and there's Geryon. Now, if you're picturing some sleek, elegant creature, don't. Geryon is 3 torsos wide, with 6 swinging fists and a mood problem. His dog, Orthrus, lunges first. Heracles slays it with one blow. The herdsman tries next. No luck. Then comes the real fight. Heracles versus Geryon. It's sweaty, bloody, uncomfortable, like watching someone fist fight a windmill. But Heracles is done playing. He aims one poisoned arrow, straight through all 3 torsos. Geryon falls. No divine interference. No last-minute twist. It's just a clean, brutal end. And so, Heracles rounds up the cattle. Begins the long drive home. But of course, Hera's not done. She sends gadflies, not a metaphor, literal insects, swarms of them. The cattle scatter. Some swim, some vanish. Heracles chases them across rivers, through cities, into caves. At one point, he has to rebuild a portion of the herd from memory, bartering with local kings for strays. The worst part, when he finally returns, having lost a year of his life and several layers of skin, Eurystheus sniffs and says, "You stole them. That's theft. Doesn't count." You stare. Heracles doesn't flinch, stuns, like he expected it. Because, here's the thing. These labors were only supposed to be 10. But thanks to Eurystheus' convenient rulebook amendments, Hydra helped, stables paid, cattle stolen, 3 of them are disqualified. So guess what? It's 2 more labors. It should crush him, but it doesn't. because something inside Heracles has shifted. He's not doing this for Eurystheus anymore. He's not doing this for Olympus, not even for redemption. He's doing it because if he stops, he'll have to sit in that silence again. In the silence. That's worse than monsters. So, Labor 11. Retrieve the golden apples of the Hesperides, a gift from Gaia herself, guarded by nymphs, monsters, and Oya, dragon that never sleeps. The apples are sacred, divine. Not even the gods pluck them casually. But Heracles must. The journey is long, exhausting, riddled with strange encounters. At one point, he frees Prometheus as that Prometheus, chained to a rock, liver on replay. Heracles shoots the eagle, feasting on him, shatters the chains, and, in return, Prometheus offers a tip. Let Atlas fetch the apples. You raise your eyebrows, Atlas, as in, holds up the sky, Atlas. Sure enough, Heracles finds him, bent under the firmament, grunting like a dad with back pain. Heracles offers a deal. I'll hold this sky. You go get the apples. Atlas agrees, suspiciously fast. He returns, apples in hand. But he hesitates, smirks, says, actually, I think I'll deliver these myself. You keep the sky. Clever, but not clever enough. Heracles smiles. Sure. Just hold it for a moment while I adjust my cloak. Atlas takes it back, and Heracles walks off. Apples in hand. You don't cheer, you exhale, because this wasn't strength. It was wit. He's learning. He returns to Tyrant's apples gleaming. Eurystheus gapes, but says nothing. The apples, of course, must go back. They don't belong in mortal hands. French scholars say these apples are a metaphor for forbidden knowledge. It's a cosmic order, maybe even memory, the idea that you can reach into divine pain, touch it, and let it go. You believe it because Heracles didn't keep them. He just needed to prove he could. And now, just one labor left. One final test. The descent, the underworld. But that's a journey for tomorrow night. It's colder than it should be. Not the dramatic, windswept kind of cold you get in mountain passes. No, this is the hushby for a whisper cold. It's a kind that doesn't touch your skin, but your ribs. It's like a chill that lives inside your bones. Before you even know you're shivering, you're standing at the mouth of the press. Underworld. Yes, that underworld. Because Labor 12, the final and darkest of them all, is this. Descend into Hades, and return with Cerberus. 3 heads, snake, tail, claws like bronze plows. Cerberus isn't just a dog, he's a boundary. The guardian of death. The one thing standing between the world of the living and everything that refuses to stay dead. In Heracles. He's going in unarmed. That's the condition. No swords, number, poison. No lion skin cheats. Just hands, will, and a debt long overdue. Some say this labor was meant to kill him. That Eurystheus, bitter and afraid, finally saw his chance to be rid of the hero for good. But others think this was divine design. That Hera herself wanted Heracles to confront not monsters, but the full weight of consequence, not. In the end, only the dead could hold a mirror big enough you descend. Past olive groves, past cracked temples, past shrines long abandoned. At Eleusis, you pause. The priests there look at Heracles with a strange kind of fear, not because he's unclean, but because he's walking into death on purpose. They grant him rites, secret ones. Historians still argue about what those rites were. Some believe they involve fasting, sleep deprivation, and whispered myths about Persephone's return. Others think they were about truth, about shedding your own narrative before entering the place where all stories end. Either way, the priests give Heracles a map and a warning. Do not eat, do not drink, do not listen. We follow him down. River Acheron curls through the darkness like a vein. The ferryman carrying grunts when Heracles steps aboard. No payment needed this time. The gods know this is temporary. But temporary doesn't mean easy as you glide across the water. Faces rise beneath it, familiar, pale, judging. The ghosts of his wife and children don't speak, but they hover, watching, unblinking. Heracles clenches his fists, says nothing. You drift on then. The gates, massive, black iron woven with bones, can't. There's Cerberus. 3 heads, all snarling, all awake. Heracles steps forward slowly. No fear, no flinch dot, and you realize this isn't about defeating the dog. It's about being worthy of its trust. The first head lunges. Heracles sidesteps. The second snaps. He doesn't strike. Instead, he holds out a hand, speaks softly. Court you can't. Here, Cerberus pauses. The third head watches. There's something ancient in that moment, like 2 forces beyond time acknowledging one another. Pain recognizes pain. The dog knows who he is, and now so does Heracles. Then he grabs the creature by the necks, not violently, firmly, respectfully, and slowly, ever so slowly, leads Cerberus upward. The darkness thins. The earth returns. You're back in Tyrants. The sun shines. The air hums. And Heracles stands before Eurystheus, holding a living myth. The king screams, like Kana, shriek, dives back into his jar, begins muttering something about banishing the beast. Please, gods, take it back, Heracles. Does he walk Cerberus back down to the gate, releases him without chains? No need. The job is done. 12 labors. It's 12 burdens. It's 12 echoes of a sin that wasn't his fault, but that he still chose to answer for. Historians list this as the end, but of course, it isn't, because guilt doesn't disappear when the list is finished. You watch Heracles stand alone now. No crowd, no parade, no chorus of gods applauding his efforts. Just quiet. A silence deeper than before. A silence that asks, now what? Tanits. The question, isn't it? When your rage has cooled? When the labors are over? When the gods have nothing left for you to prove, what do you do with the man who's left behind? You find Heracles on a hill outside Tiryns, half buried in wild time and memories. The sun setting, which feels appropriate like the gods themselves, decided to dim the sky just a little out of respect. He isn't doing anything, it's just sitting. One knee bent, lion pelt draped around his shoulders, staring at nothing and everything all at once. You ask him quietly what's next. He doesn't answer, because truth is, there is no next. Not really. The labors were never a beginning. They were a bandage, a trial, a delay. Now that they're over, the world is still here, still broken, still full of things he can't fix. He could go home, but his home is gone. He could start over, but the past clings like hydropoison, so he does the only thing he knows how to do. He wanders, you follow, together. You drift through Greece like smoke after fire. The people recognize him now, not as a prince or a hero or even a demigod, but as something stranger, something heavier. Some run to him, others run from him. In one village, an old woman lays flowers at his feet. In another, a boy hides behind a goat. You keep moving. In Alice, he builds a temple. In Elis, he wrestles a river god over land rights. In Delphi, he returns the apples with his head bowed, not because he must, but because he wants to. It's there that the whispers begin, not from Hera this time, but from people, regular mortals with cracked sandals and open mouths. They say Heracles is more than a man, that he became something during the labors, that death itself blinked when he walked past. French accounts say he glowed faintly after returning from the underworld, that his eyes held the color of ash in morning sky. One drunk scribe claimed he spoke with ghosts even in daylight. Heracles ignores the gossip, but you see it, the way he moves. It's a quiet he leaves behind. It's a weight of everything he carries. Even now, one day, he stops at the edge of a battlefield. The war has already begun to petty kings fighting over sheep or salt or a daughter. Promised and never delivered. The ground is slick. Tia hums with panic. Heracles doesn't ask who's right. He just steps between the armies. No sword, no shield, just the lion pelt, and says, "Enough." It's not loud, but it lands. The soldiers freeze. The kings hesitate, and for one perfect, impossible moment, no one fights. Later, when it starts again, because it always starts again, people will say a god walked among them that day, that even Ares paused, that the sky itself blinked. Historians still argue what happened. Some say it was a parable, okay? Others think it really happened to Heracles, by presence alone, stopping a war. Fringe theorists suggest Hera allowed it, as some twisted form of mercy. But Heracles, he just walks away, because he knows peace. Real peace doesn't come from standing still. It comes from carrying on. Eventually, word reaches him. A girl, young, smart, fierce as a Artemis. Her name is Deianira. You meet her in Caladan, surrounded by men twice her size and half her sense. She looks Heracles up and down, doesn't flinch, doesn't curtsy, just says, "So, you're the one who wrestled death?" He shrugs. "Just borrowed a dog." She laughs, and somehow, that's it. You stay, for a while, longer than you've stayed anywhere since the madness, and for the first time in years, you see Heracles smile, not the bitter twist he gives Eurystheus, or the forced calm of battle. A real smile, like maybe, just maybe, he's more than the sum of his labors. They marry, there's a feast, there's dancing. Heracles even sings badly, but loud enough that it counts. For a little while, the world is soft again, but of course, nothing stays. Soft in myth, because where love grows, so does fear. And Heracles, he still hasn't outrun his shadow. Not yet. Love doesn't erase history, it just gives it quieter corners to rest in. You and Heracles settle in the foothills near the river Evenus, where mornings smell like olive bark and rain. Deianira fits beside him like a verse in an old hymn sharp. Lovely, dangerous when ignored. She's no damsel. She trains with a spear, argues philosophy, doesn't flinch when Heracles dreams too loudly. You start to believe, truly believe that maybe this is it. Maybe the gods have looked away. Maybe the past is a closed door, but the river has other plans. You're crossing the shallows one morning. Heracles is ahead, laughing. Deianira's behind, holding her sandals high. The current is tricky mudslick and full of little coils of glassy, green water that tug like impatient children. That's when he appears. Nessus. A centaur. Kia. Like woven weeds, he offers to help Deianira across, claims it's custom, honor, sacred duty. Heracles nods, trusts. You don't. The second they're mid-river, Nessus bolts, carries her upstream. She screams. You freeze. Heracles doesn't. He draws his bow, notched with a hydropoison arrow, and fires. One shot, direct hit. Nessus collapses on the bank, gasping, dying. But dying things, in myth, always have one last line. Nessus grabs Deianira's wrist and hisses, something that his blood can secure Heracles' love, that it's a charm, a loyalty bond. She believes him. She doesn't know the blood is poison, spoiling with hydrovenom. Later, much later, she'll keep a vial of it, just in case. Tucked into the folds of her linen. Love, after all, is a terrifying thing to lose. For now, Heracles brushes her hair behind her ear and laughs away the fear. He says, "It's over." that monsters don't come back, but they do. Just not always in claws and teeth. Years pass, you drift. Heracles helps defend Caladan. He takes on little jobs, moving boulders, negotiating truces, rescuing cats from temple roofs. He's slower now, still strong, but wearied. The kind of tired you can't nap away. Then comes the war against Eurytus, king of Ochilia, a king with a daughter, Iole, a man with too much pride. Heracles offers help. Eurytus insults him. The details vary. Some say Heracles demanded Iole as a prize. Others insist he wanted peace and was mocked. Historians still argue whether this war was ambition or reaction. What we do know, Heracles razes Ochilia, burns it, takes Iole with him, not as a lover, some say, as a ward. A reminder, a wound he refuses to close. But back in Trachis, Deianira hears rumors of another woman, of betrayal, of Heracles slipping into old gods' habits, so she does what any heart cracked by silence might do. She reaches for the vial, Nes-us, blood. She soaks a rope in it and sends it as a gift, a token, a prayer, a curse wrapped in lace. When Heracles receives it, he's grateful, smiles, pulls it over his shoulders, and then, Caine, not pain like a sword. Worse, the blood burns. The poison eats through skin, sinew, nerve. He screams. You've never heard him scream before he claws at the robe, corset. It clings weld to his flesh. His bones begin to blacken. He knows this isn't punishment from Hera. It's from love. Deianira sees what she's done, realizes the trick, and her heart shatters like cheap pottery on stone. Some say she runs to the sea. Some say she drinks poison. Some say she simply fades. All you know is Heracles lives long enough to climb Mount Ota, long enough to build his own funeral pyre, long enough to beg anyone to light it. And finally, someone does. Philoctetes, a friend, boy, a firebearer of myth. The flames rise, and something impossible happens. The mortal burns away, but the divine remains, because Heracles, flesh of a woman, seed of a god, is claimed by Olympus at the moment of combustion, not death. Ascension, he rises. Through smoke, becomes lightning, becomes myth, becomes constellation. Historians still argue whether Heracles died or transcended, whether it was a myth to explain his disappearance or a cultural code for deification. French thinkers propose body doubles, divine abduction, even elaborate metaphors for trauma recovery. You don't argue. You saw the robe. You heard the scream. You felt the mountain shudder, and now it's gone. Not gone, gone, just above, somewhere between thunder and memory and you. You begin the slow walk back down the mountain, lone, not a companion anymore, but a witness, because someone has to remember. You walk for days, not because there's nowhere to go, but because the silence is thicker now, like walking through smoke that remembers the fire. Heracles is gone, but the world still holds his weight, in stories, in ruins, in scars, in people. You stop in villages where children wear lion masks made of straw. They shout, "I am Heracles," and swing wooden clubs at imaginary monsters. You smile, but it doesn't feel warm. It feels like echo, because they are pretending to be the hero, but none of them really know the cost. In one temple, a priest tells the story of his glorious deeds. No mention of madness. No mention of a wife, or sons, or poisoned robes. Just labors, triumphs, godhood. You almost interrupt. Almost. But what would be the point? Okay? This is how myths work. They get washed, polished, sanded down until all the splinters are gone, till the blood is metaphor and the grief is poetry. You remember things they've already forgotten. You remember how he wept when he saw his wife's sandals still beside the fire. You remember how softly he held a wounded bird after the fifth labor. You remember how tired he looked when Eurystheus gave him the final task, like he already knew there wouldn't be an end. You'll remember him, and maybe that's your labor now to remember still. The world moves. You arrive in Athens one morning to find a statue being raised 12 feet tall. Bronze, muscles like sculpted earthquakes. Heracles, mid-swing, clubbed, court, some long dead beast. They got the muscles right, but not the eyes. His eyes were never that blank, not even in madness, especially not then. You stand beside a traveling bard who's reciting a newer version of the labors. It's shiny, sanitized. The madness, he says, came from Hera's jealousy, but only lasted a day. Heracles atoned through 12 trials of glory. You ask him if the bard knows what atonement really means. He shrugs, keeps singing. Later, you find the temple of Zeus, grand, covered in laurels and stone lions. There's a small alcove, half hidden behind a curtain, where someone's left an offering. It's not gold, it's not grained. It's a child's drawing stick figures. A man with 3 heads wrestling a lion with 7. You smile, because it's wrong, but it's honest, and that's closer to the truth than most. You walk north, in Thebes, the city of his birth. The midwives still talk about how his twin cried while Heracles stared at the ceiling like he already knew the sky would fall. They remember his mother, Alcmene, how she never spoke his name after the madness, how she once tore down a statue of Hera during a storm and dared lightning to take her, till the lightning didn't because it knew better. You wonder if Alcmene is still alive. You don't ask. Some stories are best left buried. Instead, you visit the tombs. You find one marked with his name. A cenotaph. Really? He has no grave, no bones, just a stone, just a spot to bow your head and pretend the past can be contained by orders. You kneel, touch the stone. It's warm, which shouldn't be possible. Some say Zeus placed Heracles among the stars, that his likeness lives in the night sky now, bound in pinpricks of light. Historians still argue which constellation he is: Orion, Ophiuchus, Lyra. Fringe theorists say he was never a person at all, just a myth, a collection of heroic tropes and borrowed victories stitched together by bards with too much wine. You disagree because myths don't smile like he did. They don't bleed. They don't curse under their breath when their sandal straps snap, or stop to help a child back on a donkey, or flinch when someone says home. Only people do that. Heracles wasn't a myth. He became one, and that's not the same. Later, you find a boy playing near a fountain. He asks you if the stories are true. You ask him which ones. He says, the ones where Heracles couldn't die. You pause, then nod, but you don't say what you're thinking, that it wasn't immortality that saved him. It was forgiveness, and not from Hera, from himself. The gods could place him among the stars, dress him in thunder, call him hero all they wanted, but none of it meant anything until he let go of the fire inside. And in that final moment, on that pyre, he did. He forgave the man who crushed his children in a fit of divine madness. He forgave the boy who begged Hera to love him. He forgave the man who couldn't save Deianira. And then he rose, not to escape punishment, but because he finally understood he didn't have to carry it anymore. You wake up in a quiet inn on the road to Delphi, blankets tangled around your legs, and the morning sun just barely leaking through the slats of the shutters. There's a warmth in the air today, from the sun, but from something else. Gentleness, like the world, for once, has decided not to push so hard. You make your way through the village square where a group of school children are listening to an old man tell stories by the fountain. His voice is hoarse, his eyes clouded, but his words still catch fire when he speaks the name, Heracles. You pause. He's telling the story of the Nemean lion, how the hide couldn't be pierced, how Heracles strangled it with his bare hands and wore the skin like a second soul. The kids are wide-eyed, clutching figs and wooden dolls. They cheer at all the right parts. They don't know they're cheering for a man who once wept into the same lion's fur at night. You don't interrupt. What? What'd you say? That the truth's messier, that it hurts more. That sometimes Heracles didn't want to be a hero, just a man who didn't wake up screaming. You sit down at the edge of the square and listen instead, because sometimes stories aren't told for accuracy. They're told to survive. And Heracles, he's surviving in these stories, not as a god, not as a killer, but as something larger, more human. After the crowd scatters, the old man catches your eye. You knew him, he says. You blink. He grins. Not in the body, maybe, but you carry him. And maybe you do. You walk again, this time to the edge of Thessaly, where the hills look like sleeping giants and the wind tastes like burnt cedar. You're looking for a shrine, a small one not listed in any temple ledger. It's carved into the cliffside, barely more than a crack in the rock. But the moment you step inside, you feel it. A hush that isn't silence, but reverence. People have been coming here for centuries, scratching prayers into the walls, not to Zeus, not to Hera, to Heracles. They don't ask for thunder, they ask for strength. Strength to lift the grief, strength to keep walking, strength to forgive what haunts them when the world goes quiet. One note catches your eye. It's faded, but you can still read it. I lost my son. I dream of him in fire. Help me carry this. You sit with that, because you know what it means. You remember. You remember Megara. You remember the boys. You remember the rage that wasn't his, but still came from inside him. Hera didn't need to raise a sword. She just needed to whisper. And the echo destroyed everything. French thinkers say the madness was a metaphor for grief. It's how it makes you a stranger to your own hands. Mainstream scholars try to separate Heracles the man from Heracles the myth, like you can cut sorrow into tiny slices. But the truth is, they're the same thing. The madness wasn't a glitch in the story. It was the story, because without that moment, without that guilt, that horror, that unspeakable crack in the soul, there would be no labors, no climb, no redemption. Heracles didn't become divine in spite of that moment. He became divine because of it. That's the part people forget. You stay at the shrine until dusk. Someone brings flowers, wild hyacinths, wrapped in linen. Another leaves, coin. Another, a ribbon from their child's toy. It's not gold, but it's real, and somehow it feels more sacred. That night, you sleep under a fig tree. Stars overhead, cold ground below. You look up and try to find him. They say he's among them now. Zeus placed him there, a constellation of muscle and myth. Maybe, but stars are far away. In Heracles, he always felt close. The kind of close that smells like sweat and olive oil. The kind of close that carries your pack when your legs give out. The kind that throws your enemy into a river and tells a joke. As he does it, he wasn't lightning. He was weight. He was presence. And even now, even in this moment, you feel it. A hand on your shoulder, an ache in your chest, a whisper that says, you're stronger than you think. Maybe you are. Maybe you're just beginning to be. And if Heracles could crawl out from the rubble of what he did, not just survive, but rise, maybe you can too. Not into legend, not into godhood, but into something softer, something truer, something that still matters after the flames die out. You'll leave the shrine just after dawn, the sky blushing a soft apricot as the last stars slip away, including maybe Heracles. Your feet ache, your cloak smells like smoke in time, and you're no closer to answers. But something's lighter now, like the weight shifted, like some unseen hand just loosened the knots in your chest. You pass an old olive grove. A boy sits on a low wall, legs swinging. Okay? He's humming a song that sounds suspiciously like the 12 labors, but sung out of order and with way more goats. He waves at you. Do you think Heracles ever got tired? You laugh. Oh, constantly. He nods like this confirms something he already suspected. But he kept going, right? You nod back and he grins. That, right there, is the legacy, not the monsters. Not the gods, not even the constellation. It's the permission to keep going, even when you're not ready. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. You continue. Toward Trachis, where they say Heracles' ashes were scattered, though the mountain was never quite right after that. The villagers whisper that storms there rumble differently, like a lion's growl trapped in the cliffs. Some say lightning strikes the summit more often than anywhere else in Greece. You climb anyway, one step, then another. It's slow. Your knees pop, your breath clouds. The trail is rough, overgrown with laurel and the kind of thorns that ask questions later. You pause halfway up, touch a boulder that looks suspiciously punched, okay, and smile. Yeah, he was here. Eventually, you reach the top. There's no shrine, no temple, just stones, wind, and that faint, impossible scent of ash. You sit. Not because it's sacred ground though, maybe it is, but because you need to. And because you want to imagine him here in his final mortal moment. Cloak scorched, hands trembling, staring down the fire and choosing it anyway. Because that's what people forget. Heracles didn't die in battle. He chose the fire. He built the pyre with his own hands, climbed on with no fanfare, no victory music, just pain and smoke and surrender. It wasn't punishment, it was a release. He didn't go down screaming. He went up silent, ready, and maybe that's the most human thing he ever did. You lie back on the stones, watching the clouds stretch like wool across the sky. One of them looks a little like a lion. If you squint, it's not profound, but it's enough. A soft breeze breaks the mountain. Somewhere below, a shepherd's flute dances with the wind, and for a long, quiet moment, there's peace. Then dash footsteps. You glance up. It's not Heracles, of course. It's a traveler, a girl, young, fierce eyes, worn sandals. She stops beside you and says, "This the spot?" You nod. She crouches, touches the ground. They say he became a god. You nod again. She pauses. But he was a man first. And just like that, sure, not alone in the remembering, because myth can echo through temples and stars and thrones. Sure, but it lives. In moments like this, shared, tired, true. You tell her stories, not the ones from bard songs, but the real ones, about his clumsy grin, his bad singing voice, the time he got lost in a vineyard and insisted the vines attacked him, the time he spared a thief because the man cried like a child and reminded him of himself. She listens, really listens, and when you finish, she says, "I'll carry that." You nod, because now it's hers too. And maybe this is how myths truly endure. Not carved in marble, but whispered. It's passed hand to hand, like a torch that never dies. The sky deepens. Somewhere, thunder murmurs. You stand, she stands too, and together, you begin to walk back down the mountain, not to erase the past, but to live beyond it. You walk down the mountain slowly. There's no rush now, no labors to finish, no kings to impress, no divine errands scribbled on a scroll. Just the dust of your sandals, the hush of wind between olive branches, and a kind of stillness that feels earning not given. The girl walks beside you, quiet but thoughtful. Occasionally she asks questions like, did Heracles ever lose a fight? Did he ever cry in front of people? Did he ever wish he was just normal? And you answer, yes, absolutely. More than once. You don't romanticize it. You don't tie a ribbon around the pain. You just tell it like it was, because Heracles wasn't a statue. He was a man. In the next village, a festival is underway. Not a big one, just a few musicians, roasted lamb on spits, garlands of rosemary, and kids trying to race olives down the cobbled street. You smell fig, cakes, and firewood. It's the kind of place Heracles would have ducked into to lift a cart, carry a barrel, and politely refuse a dozen invitations to dinner before giving in any way. You and the girl sit near the edge of the square. Someone stands up to tell a story. And yes, of course, sits him, Heracles. Only this time, storyteller includes things you haven't heard, said aloud in years. His madness, his mourning, his labors, not as punishment, but as a choice to stay in the world, to not vanish, not to keep walking, even when walking hurt. You glance at the girl. She's staring, eyes wide, not blinking. You feel something twist quietly in your chest. Hope, This is new, not the old Heracles with bulging muscles and simplified glory. This is all of him. A man broken and stitched together by grief, trying his best not to collapse again, not for Olympus, not even for justice, but for himself. The storyteller finishes. The crowd claps. The music resumes. Somewhere, someone drops a tray of honeyed nuts, and everyone laughs too hard, and just for a second, you feel like the gods are finally paying attention the right way. That night, you're offered a place too. Sleep a soft mat by the hearth, wool blankets, the smell of cinnamon and ash. You lie there, the girl across the room already snoring gently. You stare at the wooden rafters. You think about Deianira. You think about Iole. You think about Eurystheus, hiding in his jar even after Heracles was gone. And you wonder, was it worth it? All of it. The labors, the pain, the solitude, the slow, strange climb from man to myth. You remember something Heracles said once, after the 8th labor, when his hands were shaking from killing the man-faced bull of Crete. The monsters are never the hard part. It's remembering who you were before you became the man who kills them. And maybe that's what this whole story was about. Not strength, not redemption, not even wrath, but remembrance, because he never got to be just Heracles, son of Alcmene, a boy with 2 big hands and 2 loud footsteps. Not really. The moment Zeus chose her, that boy's life was sealed in marble. But maybe, through all the blood and sand and smoke, he found pieces of that boy again in the softness of a lion's mane, in the cool spray of the Cretan sea, in the silence of a mountain pyre, and in that final moment, just before the flames rose maybe. He wasn't Heracles the demigod, or Heracles the mad, or Heracles the avenger. Maybe he was just a man who tried. The wind shifts outside. Crickets buzz. A distant owl hoots 3 times in the dark. And for the first time in a long, long while you feel ready for the end. Not because the story's finished, but because it's full. You lie awake. In the quiet, the night folding around you like a soft, warm blanket. The weight of the story settles deep, not like a burden, but a familiar presence, like a friend who's seen the worst and still stayed. You breathe it in, the madness, the murders, the labors, the love lost and found, the fire that consumed, and the stars that claimed him. It's all there, woven into the fabric of a life that was never meant to be simple. You think about Hera the goddess, whose fury was both curse and catalyst. Patia, how her jealousy shaped a mortal's fate, driving him to the brink and back again. How her wrath created a tragedy as much as a legend. Some say she was cruel beyond measure. Others argue she was a divine force balancing chaos and order. Historians still debate her true role, and fringe scholars propose she was more tragic than villainous mother cast out. A lover scorned, a goddess with her own silent suffering. You close your eyes and imagine the final moments Heracles on his pyre, the flames licking his flesh, the smoke curling up to the heavens. The man dissolving into myth, but also the myth becoming more human than ever. The wind hums softly outside your window, a lullaby of olive leaves and distant thunder. You feel your heart beat slow, syncing with the rhythm of the night. And you know this, myths aren't just stories to scare or entertain. They are mirrors. They show us our shadows and our light. They remind us that even the strongest carry scars, that madness and love are often two sides of the same coin. And that redemption isn't about perfection. It's about trying. So as your eyes drift closed, you carry Heracles with you, not just as a hero of legend, but as a man who wrestled gods and monsters alike, who was broken and rebuilt, who burned and rose again. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together.